Sheldon, thank you for joining us. What are some things that people should know about Treaty 4?
So Treaty 4, the 150th anniversary of Treaty 4, of course, is this September. It's going to be a huge celebration out at Fort Qu'Appelle. We've been doing quite a bit of planning for it. As a non-Indigenous person, I'm Ukrainian and German background, so a lot of what I know about treaty comes from that perspective, but also from the perspective of elders, and it's really the elders' teachings that have informed Treaty 4 for me.
Nice. What lessons did signatories of Treaty 4 learn from earlier treaties when dealing with the Crown?
Oh, that's a great question. So for Treaty 4, the advantage was the moccasin telegraph. Qu'Appelle's not far from Winnipeg, not far from Red River. And so many of the chiefs, many of the leaders knew what happened for the Treaty 1 and 2 negotiations, even a little bit about Treaty 3. So they're well aware of Canada's position. But for Treaty 4, it was really about trust. The Canadian government had recently purchased Rupert's Land from the Hudson's Bay Company. And of course, that was 1869. Of course, all of the chiefs and the leadership at Qu'Appelle knew that that had happened, and they were not happy about it. They felt that the Canadian government had no right to purchase anything from the Hudson's Bay Company where title was not included for First Nations. There was no treaty, there was no discussion of Indigenous rights. For Rupert's Land, the HPC had only right to trade. And so when Canada did that, the chiefs were very displeased, and most of the early days of the negotiations were just trying to overcome that obstacle.
Wow, that's really interesting. I think I remember reading that in Indigenous Studies quite a few years back. 150 years later, there seems to be a lot going on with Treaty 4 and other treaties when it comes to things like the annuity payments and cows and plows. Any thoughts on those ongoing discussions and the evolution of the treaties, I guess you could say?
Those are really important. I started studying treaties in 1996. And when I started that, people really had no idea about treaties. Like, you could ask someone, mostly non-Indigenous peoples, what treaty area they were in, and they would have no clue. But now, of course, that's changed. A lot of people are more aware. We've had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We've had missing and unmarked graves. People are much more involved, much more interesting. They're trying to learn. They're trying to learn about treaties, and a lot of the lessons, a lot of the things that come from Treaty 4, really deal with, I guess, Indigenous peoples asserting their rights. And we saw that through cows and plows, through special claims. The treaty agricultural promise that was never delivered is finally being dealt with through claims. And annuities with the Robinson-Huron Treaty, we've seen that the Canadian government, they're not offering to, they're being forced to by the courts. They're being forced to acknowledge that the annuity promise, $25 for chiefs, $15 for headmen, $5 for every First Nations person as long as the sun shines, grass grows, and rivers flow, was never meant to be stuck at $5. That was an important promise, and it was that amount was supposed to grow. And with the Robinson-Huron Treaty, there's an escalator clause that says that that annuity would increase as the wealth of the lands increased. And of course, that has happened everywhere. And so Canada has acknowledged that. And so what we see now with the cows and plows, or the Treaty Agricultural Benefits Promise, we will see with annuities further west with the numbered treaties in the upcoming years.
Really quickly, some of those payouts, those settlements, with regards to that, those settlements you were just talking about, they're not one time, right? This is supposed to continue going on?
Yeah, it does continue. So the Treaty Agricultural Promise, we actually have a great webinar video on our website. So I'm the Director of Research for the Office of the Treaty Commissioner, and our former Treaty Commissioner, Mary Musquat-Culbertson, did like a Q&A video, which is on our website, otc.ca, that people can look at, and it kind of explains some of the ins and outs. But no, the Treaty Agricultural Promises continues, but it's a unique promise because it was originally a one-time. It was for 3 years to enable First Nations to participate in the economy of the day. That did not happen, and that's why we have the specific claims. And as far as how that compensation in lieu of that treaty grievance, that's up to each individual First Nation to define how they want to implement that.
Yeah. And really briefly, Sheldon, why is it important for all in Canada to acknowledge, learn from, and celebrate the treaties?
Well, it's very important, and it's also important to understand what's happened in the last 150 years. We have an Elders Council, and when we started planning for the Treaty 4 150, I asked, well, what do we want to do for the Treaty 4 celebration? And it was really quiet. 12 elders around the table, and then finally one of the elders, Elder Gladys Wampus-Gray, said, well, what do we have to celebrate? Canada has not been an honorable partner in treaty negotiations, and I think that also needs to be acknowledged, and that's also part of recognizing the 150th anniversary of Treaty 4.
Well, hi, Sheldon. We'll have to leave it there. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Miigwech, Kanask Mitten.
And that's your midday newscast for this Thursday, August 8th. Dennis Ward will be here for your evening national newscast in a few hours. Make sure to join us again. From everyone at APTN National News, Masicho, Miigwech, hi. Thank you for watching.